and welcome back, my dear students, to your YouTube channel. In today's video, we shall be discussing a short story called The Last Lesson. This short story is from your ICSE Class 10 syllabus from the textbook Treasure Chest. So without further ado, let's get started. But before I begin, let me remind you once again that if you've been following my videos, they're helping you to understand the text better and most importantly helping you to write your answers better. Kindly do not forget to give me a like and also to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It shall keep me motivated. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. I am on page 166 about the author. Alright. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist. The Last Lesson, a short story set against the backdrop of the Franco-Prussian War, deals with the occupation of Alsace and Lorraine in the year 1870. Now here you need to know a bit of your history. Alright. Franco-Prussian War was fought between 1870 to 1871. Okay. At that point of time, Prussia consisted of Germany, Poland and parts of Austria. Prussia was led by Bismarck at this point of time, and Prussia had defeated France. Why? Because Alsace and Lorraine were part of France during that point of time. And Alsace and Lorraine had rich iron ore deposits. So naturally it was an industrial region, and this region brought in a lot of revenue. So Prussia wanted to have complete control over it, and it attacked it and occupied it. Alright. So the story tells us what happens when there is an attempt to slowly sever is to cut around the tie between people and its language by a powerful enemy. The Last Lesson is a great reminder of how we cannot take our language for granted. Language here means the mother tongue, the tongue in which we're speaking. And how important it is to love and learn one's language. Why? Because the language that we speak determines our identity. It forms the defining part of our existence. The moment you will not be allowed to speak in your own language, you will feel extremely uncomfortable. You will feel as if a part of you is being taken away from you. In order to protect one's individual and collective identity. The story is a sharp and poignant reminder on how important it is not to put off learning. Its beauty lies in its patriotic appeal. The author takes a humane look at a teacher's self-appraisal and his grief at the impending separation. Alright? So having said that, let's come to the story, The Last Lesson. I started for school very late that morning. I is the narrator. He is a little school-going boy. His name is Franz. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread. Dread is a fear of scolding, especially because Monsieur Remel is the teacher, had said that he would question us on participles. Participles, your lesson in grammar. And I did not know the first word about them. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright, the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were training. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles. So, the teacher had probably taught participles and this little boy had not paid attention. Now, today, the teacher had said that he would be asking questions. But then he's scared of visiting the class because if the teacher asks and he's unable to answer, he would either be mercilessly scolded or, beaten up. The teacher was extremely strict. However, this little Franz was anything but serious in studies, especially when it came to his language. He was rather interested in things that were outside the classroom. How the day was bright, how the birds were chirping, how the military soldiers were training. All these things interested him. But he had no choice of missing his class because he was extremely scared of his teacher, unlike most of you. And he decides to forego his desire of spending time outside the classroom and come back to class. Alright. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. Town hall is your, the market kind of a place wherein all the important activities of the play region of the place takes place, whether it is trade, whether it is commerce, everything. And your bulletin board is, kind of a notice board wherein important news and circulars would be put up for everyone to know. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. And I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? Because he's a young boy, he's very innocent, he's naive, he cannot understand the complexities of the world, of the geopolitics. And so he says, everything bad has happened already. So what's there to be done anymore? So nothing bad can happen. Then, as I hurried by, as fast as I could, the blacksmith watcher, blacksmith is a person who, trades in coal, who was there with his apprentice is training, reading the bulletin, called after me. Don't go so fast, Bob. You will get to school in plenty of time. So he said, why are you hurrying up, child? You will have a lot of time in reaching school. I thought he was making fun of me and reached Monsieur Ramel's little garden all out of breath because he was late. So he knew that if he's late, the teacher would, reprimand him like anything. So he was panting. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street, commotion. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud, without our hands over our ears, to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. So things were very, very different on that particular day, on that eventful day. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But, of course, that day everything had to be quiet as a Sunday morning. So things were not like a normal school day. This is the first indication, or rather not first, we have already had several indications that there were a lot of, Prussian soldiers practicing their military exercises. Then there were these people gathered around the bulletin board and the town hall. And now the school has been extensively quiet on that particular day. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and Monsieur Ramel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. Alright children, you must be wondering, why am I reading M. Hamel as Monsieur Ramel? Because this is French, okay? The story is French, set in France. So M is actually Mr. in English. And the equivalent of Mr. in English for French is Monsieur. So Monsieur Hamel. And H is silent, so Hamel. Monsieur Hamel. Alright? And Monsieur Ramel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. So he is a disciplinarian, first characteristic. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how blushed and how frightened I was. He was extremely red because he's already late to school, already late to class, and now the teacher is pacing up and down the room and he has to walk in. So he's scared, really scared. But nothing happened. Again, something very unusual. Because had it been any other day, the teacher would have really scolded him. But today, that did not happen. Monsieur Remel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." Very strange. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap all embroidered. So the teacher had his best clothes on. Very strange, another indicator that something untoward is going to happen. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn, calm. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting there quietly like ourselves. So today in the classroom, there were not students alone, but common men. The citizens have also come in to join the class. This is indeed very, very strange. Old Hosser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. Everybody looked sad, and Hosser had brought an old primer. Primer, it's a small book containing basic facts about a subject. Usually people use it when they are first learning something about some subject. So old Hosser was carrying his primer with himself. Thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. While I was wondering about it all, Monsieur Remel mounted his chair and in the same grave, that is serious and gentle tone which he had used to me said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you." So this is why things were so different the entire day. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German. Berlin, capital of Germany, to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, because Alsace and Lorraine is now under Germany. The new master comes tomorrow. Probably the order has come that the French teacher is not allowed to stay here, lest he propagates the messages in French. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very, very attentive. Very interesting. Despite knowing that this is going to be the last lesson that he is going to deliver, the teacher just could have, only spent his time discussing various things of life with his students. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he wants his children to be very, very attentive, because he's going to teach and teach all that he knows. Why? We'll see that a little later. But what does it highlight about his character? It highlights his integrity as a teacher, his commitment, and his dedication towards the subject. That is why he is a teacher. What a thunderclap these words were to me. Thunderclap is a shock. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up at the town hall. So, actually, this was the message that was put up in the form of a circular on the bulletin board at the town hall, and that is why people had gathered there. My last French lesson? Why, I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. See, the child did not study participles and had come to class because he was probably not interested. And now, when he gets to know that this is going to be the last lesson in French, he feels extremely guilty. He feels sad that he doesn't know his subject well. So sense of guilt comes in. Oh, Oh, sorry, I was for not learning my lessons for sicking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Sar. Sar is a river in the northeastern province of France. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints were old friends, and now that I couldn't give up, see how the sense of guilt is hitting him. And Monsieur Remel too. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So all these days, all these years, children have despised Monsieur Remel, for being extremely strict, for being cranky, for being extremely stern as a teacher, for being very particular about his lessons. And now today, France is feeling everything in a different way. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too. So every individual is trying to hold on to the last bit of everything that is left in France, of everything that is French. This is the desperate attempt to try and savor the last bit of morsel in French. It was their way of thanking our master for this 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Today they are no longer French. Today they are under Germany. They are Germans. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite, but then he did not know anything about participles. That is why he was scared in coming to class. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake. But I got mixed up because he was anyway did not know anything about the subject. Now he is emotional also. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. I heard Monsieur Remel say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. See how it is. That is what a true teacher is. He says, I'm not going to say you anything. It is for you to realize where things have gone wrong. Every day we have said to ourselves, Bah, I have plenty of time, I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we've come out. Ah, that's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So every day we had delayed things, learning, by saying we've enough time, we can study later. And now see what has it come to. Tomorrow onwards, no French lesson. Now those fellows out there will have the right to tell you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? Very, very interesting that you are French and yet you don't know how to read and write in French. But you are not the worst, poor little France. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. He says, no, you're not the only one to be blamed. That's because each one of us is guilty. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mill so as to have a little more money. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So the teacher is saying that even your parents are at fault, and at the same time even I am at fault. Why? Because every time you failed to deliver the lessons in class, what did I do as a punishment? I had sent you outside the class to water my plants. Had I not done that, had I made you sit in class till the time you've learnt it correctly, things wouldn't have been this bad. And on most of the days, on multiple occasions, what have I done? I wanted to go on fishing and I had called it a off day for school. Then from one thing to another, Monsieur Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest and the most logical. Then we must guard it amongst us and we never forget it. Because this sentence is very important. When people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. You can be colonized politically, geographically, but emotionally, you can never be colonized. I'm not sure, but if you have heard of that song, Amar Hat Bandhibi, Pa Bandhibi, Mon Bandhibi Kamone, this is just that. You can colonize me politically, you can capture me geographically, but my thoughts, my ideas, my identities are all transcendent. They are all transcendental. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it all. Why? Because for the first time, Franz was paying attention in class. All he said seemed so easy. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience because the teacher wanted to give away everything he had. This was his last French lesson, again proving his commitment and dedication. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all in our heads at one stroke. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, Monsieur Hamel had new copies for us, written in beautiful round hand, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of scratching of the pens over the paper. So it was pin drop silence. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? It's so innocent that he's asking this, Franz. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw Monsieur Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, because his mind is preoccupied with the idea that for 40 years he's done this, and from tomorrow morning he will not be required to do it anymore. Or rather, he will not be allowed to do it anymore. As if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy. For 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. So, on the second floor he lived, it was his house, and on the first floor, the ground floor, it was his school. And now, today he's been asked to move out. Only the desks and the benches had been worn smooth, the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. How it must have broken his heart to live it all, poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day. Herein comes the idea of uprooting, the idea of rootlessness. 40 years he spent here. Maybe 40 years he is only teaching here. Maybe more than that. Much ahead of that time he had come in and settled down here. So many days, so many years he spent here, and tomorrow morning he's supposed to be out of it. So the idea of rootlessness, the idea of one getting uprooted from its own roots. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba, be, bo, boo. This is lesson in phonetics. Down there at the back of the room, old Hosser had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying because he's having to give away a part of himself. The language that was his own identity is being forcefully taken away from him. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remember it, the last lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12. And the moment the bell rings, what does it indicate? That the class has come to an end. No more French lesson. Then the Angelus. Angelus is your Roman Catholic prayers, which are, usually presided by a loud bell. The church bell, of course. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians, that the country is now there, returning from drill, sounded under our windows. Monsieur Rimmel stood up, very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall again. So, his journey as a teacher of French language comes to an end. And it is this very thought that he will no longer be identified as a French teacher made him very, very pale, very scared. Why? Because that has been his identity. That has been the defining part of his identity. That has given him his name and fame. That's gone. Just with the ringing of one bell. Then he turned, my friends, said he, I, but something choked him. He could not go on. He is extremely emotional. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might wrote as large as he could, Vive la France. That means, long live France. This attempt of Monsieur Rimmel, it is a desperate attempt to resist the German invasion. The last desperate attempt to resist the German invasion, knowing too well that nothing can be done. But he is a loyal and dedicated French teacher, and this was his only attempt to resist. He does not want to go away without doing anything. So, he wants to go away by leaving a mark, and what does he do? He writes on the blackboard with all the strength that he had, and most importantly, as large as he could, that Vive la France. Then he stopped his leaned head against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, you may go. So this last act of Monsieur Rimmel is very significant. What does it highlight? It highlights his loyalty to the French Republic in the face of subjugation that the Germans wanted them to subjugate. But this is his defiance. Also, it highlights his indomitable allegiance to his native culture and land. This also highlights the fact that even without arms, through education, subjugation can be challenged. Alright? With that, we come to the end of the story. Now, let us quickly look at the themes of the story. What are the themes of the story? First and foremost, language. Language is a symbol of your identity, as I had been telling you all the while. Okay? And in this regard, I want you to find out what happened in Bangladesh, why 21st February is celebrated, and how Bangladesh is related to it. Please find out. You will be amazed to know that for language, people can go to such length. Okay, so having said that, please come back. Number one, language as a symbol of identity. It highlights the relationship that exists between language and cultural identity. Language is also a marker of unique cultural heritage. As a Bengali, you speak Bangla, so it highlights your Bengali heritage, your Durga Pujo, your March, your Mishti, your Kolakuli, all this. Also, this idea of language also highlights one thing, that when the Germans invaded France, it did not take away their freedom alone, it took away their identity also, because the order has come that French language will no longer be taught, so now everything will be German. So with their political freedom, their language is also gone, and so is their identity. Alright, that's the first thing. The second thing is value of education. As I said, even without arms, you can resist invasion through education. And thirdly, of course, your patriotism, how you can remain loyal to your own culture, your own land, your own roots, even in the face of subjugation. Alright, now coming to the title, is the title of the story justified? Yes, it is, because the entire story revolves around the final lesson. And this is not just any final lesson, but this is the lesson of life. It is a lesson which tells you how to preserve language, to protect your own identity and culture, and how without arms, by learning, by using your own language and culture, patriotic fervor can be kept intact. Alright, I hope I've been lucid enough in my explanation. Even then, if you have any doubt, do not forget to write in the comment section. I shall be rather more than happy to help. Okay, see you in the next video very soon. Till then, take very good care of your health, and goodbye.